Hi, I'm Richard Niles, welcoming you to Chapter 12 of Adventures in Creativity. Now, today we're going to be talking about success and failure. Now, I've been a professional in many areas of music for a long time, and although I was working within the music business, I never let music become a business. The great actor Ian McKellen said, "Don't practice art for money and fame, but to experience becoming, to find out what's inside you." We all have to eat, but creativity is its own reward. Artistic success is probably easier to achieve than financial success, and some very wealthy artists have never achieved artistic success. So it's a reasonable question to ask, how does an artist become financially successful? And how important is that to you, really? Well, the reality is that most of us are going to have to be happy with artistic rewards and pizza. But if you want financial success, I'll answer the question the way business people answer it. Sell something. And what do you as an artist have to sell? Well, of course, your ideas, your personality, your attitude, your sensibility, the way you look, the way you present yourself, and your unique vision. As artists, we have to figure out which of our qualities other people will want to buy. Heads of companies will tell you to find a need and fulfill it. Sometimes, if what you have to offer is really new, so off the wall that no one wants it, you may have to create a need for the thing that you have. One way to do that is by finding something universal in what is the most personal. If you analyze the work of the greatest innovators, that's exactly what they did. How would you describe a hamburger to someone who had only eaten fish? How would you explain a musical like Guys and Dolls to a person who has only seen Shakespearean plays? As we've seen, nothing is utterly unrelated to anything else. No matter what language you want to speak, you are still communicating. What do you want to communicate? If you can do it, you can achieve success. Now, as I've already said, there are many teachers offering courses they claim will give you a simple plan for success, a hack or a secret. They're lying. There are no secrets, no simple plan, and there are no hacks. What you can certainly get, if you're lucky, is good advice from experienced people. The more experienced your teachers are, the better the advice. Be humble enough to seek out teachers. Be solitary enough to read books written by great minds. Then be smart enough to take that advice and knowledge and diligent enough to implement it. The actress Betty Davis explained that we have to find a way to create our own success despite the obstacles. She said, "I think you fight time. I think you fight stupidity. I think you fight the easy, mediocre, silly way things are normally done. I think it is utterly insane to wait and see what might happen for you. I think our job is to make it happen." The other thing about success is something young artists are not aware of. Success is never free of problems. Sometimes it's the beginning of a new set of problems. Every business is corrupt. Everyone. And in music, you get ripped off by managers, agents, and record labels. Collaborators, sometimes your best friends, will leave you in a heartbeat for a better paying gig. And there's a personal cost. With success, all your friends treat you differently, and it's no fun being around them while they're trying so hard not to seem jealous. In fact, all your relationships change. I've worked with artists at the beginning of their careers who I thought were friends, but when they achieve success, they avoid me like COVID. And when you're a star, you can never be sure whether people are real friends or whether lovers love you. And you start realizing that the only thing that matters to most people is the money. And success will change you, maybe without being aware of it. People get very used to being treated like stars. They don't want to be around the people who knew them when they were sharing pizza, living in a little apartment they couldn't afford, and scuffling for gigs. And remember that insecurity you felt coming up? Well, that gets worse when you have a hit. With the questions you ask yourself, like, can I get another hit? Am I really any good? And even worse are the questions from others. Can you get another hit? Are you really any good? We've heard all the advice. Be careful what you wish for. Denzel Washington said more or less the same thing in a movie. He said, when you pray for rain, you gotta deal with the mud too. Let's talk about failure. Oscar winner Matt Damon said, the system is not built for you to succeed. That's why you have to break through it. Here's an absolute fact I've said before. You're going to fail. Yes, you, sitting there in your designer hoodie and your uncle's slippers. Definitely. Don't be surprised. Sometimes the failure will be financial or personal. Sometimes it'll be artistic. As the actor Al Pacino once said, they're not gonna like everything. The important thing is to choose or create projects you feel you can express yourself in, something you feel you can make a significant contribution to. By all means, experiment to widen your experience, but be really prepared at the important moments. As long as you can walk off the stage feeling good about the work you put in and the performance that came out, even failure is a success. As the author William Ritter wrote, failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of success. Hi, I'm Richard Niles. I've worked with some of the most creative artists on the planet. People who don't just perform, they inspire. You want to master your craft, to be the actor who moves us, the musician who finds new directions, the director who redefines what's possible? So what's the secret? Well, there is no secret, and it's not just about talent. It's all about developing your creativity, and creativity is trainable. I'll show you how to manage your time, sharpen your focus, and unlock your artistic voice. I've created exercises, games, and real-world tools, many learned from the masters I've worked with. You'll discover how to develop original ideas, beat self-doubt, and build a style that's uniquely yours. Now it's your turn. Join me in Adventures in Creativity, strategies for stimulating spontaneous self-expression. 13 videos, or get the book and become the most creative you. Failure identifies things not to do again. Do this enough, and the odds of doing the right thing increase. John Gurdon, who won the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 2012, came bottom of his class as a student. He admitted that he didn't like the reading. But when he was asked about how he then went on to win the Nobel Prize, he answered, well, by doing a lot of experiments that didn't work. In an interview, George Clooney was very articulate on the subject, speaking with the voice of his direct experience. You learn nothing from success, he said. You learn everything from failing, and fear of failing is what holds people back from doing anything. And when you don't try, and you wake up at 65 years old, you're a lot angrier than if you failed. And I guess for the sake of balance, we should include Bob Dylan's iconic and ironic pronouncement on the matter. He said, there ain't no success like failure, and failure's no success at all. Choosing success or failure. Well, we often think that success or failure happens to us. Sure, we can work towards success, but some of us think it's really in the hands of God or Steven Spielberg or the stock market. But I like to look at it a little differently. Everything in art and life is a choice. We actually choose success or failure. We make choices to create our art. We choose the people we work with, the business connections we make, our location. We make compromises and trust people when we know we shouldn't. We let our egos control our common sense. We do things that we know won't work because it's easier than getting it right. The universe, despite its fondness for entropy, has yet to establish a department of predestination. No celestial bureaucrat is stamping our foreheads at birth with a label reading, "Doomed to be a wage slave," or "Destined to be an Oscar-winning director." And yet, many otherwise intelligent people insist on believing that their fate, whether fabulous or flaccid, is out of their hands. Self-help books, without which there would be many fewer memes, assure us that we are the architects of our own destiny. Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich suggests, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Well, for me, although this makes a great meme, it's a bit of an unfinished sentence. And if you've been listening, which I know you have because you're still here at chapter 12, you'll know that I finish by saying, with a good attitude and work. A friend told me, I always wear my lucky underwear to interviews. Well, she remains unemployed, but her underwear has a supporting role in the new Star Wars movie. Okay, we already talked about giving up. The great filmmaker Orson Welles said, if you want a happy ending, that depends, of course, on where you stop your story. To me, this means how far are you willing to go? Success won't magically arrive after a reading of your tea leaves. Make the choice to be relentless. Thomas Jefferson, who was lucky enough to be president, said, I am a great believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more I have of it. Vincent van Gogh made the choice to stay true to his vision. The result was artistic success and financial failure. He chose to cut off his ear. Although it could be said that being fearless and earless didn't help him much, Vinny didn't just shrug his shoulders and mutter, oh, well, it just wasn't meant to be. Vermeer, famous for his Girl with the Pearl Earring painting, left his family in debt and bankrupt. But he didn't blame it on his tarot cards. Sometimes you just have to make a choice to be successful by giving the audience or your director what they want, even if it isn't quite what you want. Acting teachers often tell students to be subtle. The actor Robert Duvall gave Billy Bob Thornton some very useful advice. You're not always supposed to be subtle. Duvall told me there's a thin line between subtle and boring. Subtle doesn't always mean great, and over the top doesn't necessarily mean bad. Henry Ford didn't seem to go with the idea of succeeding purely by will. He said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Dale Carnegie once noted, discouragement and failure are two of the surest stepping stones to success. Thomas Edison had many failures, but he said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. He made the choice to keep trying. Now let's examine the matter of failure, which is often mistaken for the end of the road, when in fact it is just a particularly annoying speed bump. This is an encouraging thought unless you happen to be experiencing failure at an alarming rate, in which case you may be tempted to throw a rock at Mr. Carnegie. But consider the alternative, never attempting anything at all, which is a surefire way to avoid both failure and, incidentally, success. The truth seems to be that if you're not successful, take a good, hard look at the person staring back at you in the mirror and ask yourself the following questions. Obviously, you should answer them too. 1. What choices have I made this week? Which were beneficial and which were a mistake? 2. What choices will I make next week? And have I learned anything this week to help me make better choices? 3. Have I made the choice to make a schedule that I will follow next week to be more productive and more successful? I guess it's more romantic to say that success or failure is about fate, something you can't control, than it is to face the fact that it's the choices you make. All I can suggest is that you consider each choice honestly and make the right ones if you can. And of course, the best choice you'll ever make is to not miss the last episode of Adventures in Creativity with me, Richard Niles. It's surprisingly satisfying.